The Terran-Grail Conflict, Part 1, Rage. Never piss off the humans. Orin surveyed the remnants of what used to be the third largest settlement on Xalia 5 with a heavy heart. The Kovac had colonized the planet less than 30 solar cycles ago. A relatively short time, but they had been making excellent use of its mild climate and rich mineral resources. Success, however, often breeds jealousy, and their longtime adversaries, the Grail, had struck. The Grail attacked the colony just 2 days after the initial settlement was established. Thankfully, the settlers managed to send out a distress signal before the Grail destroyed the subspace transmitter. Without it, the Kovac colonists had no way to contact other planets, let alone reach outside their star system. Orin had been studying the rings of the system's outermost planet when he received the distress call. He quickly warped to a position within the local asteroid belt to observe, hoping to find a way to rescue some of his people. However, the Grail had deployed too many ships for him to sneak past. The Kovac were not a warlike species. They thrived on working the land and creating exquisite pieces of art cherished across the galaxy. Their skill in carving and metalwork was especially valued, and many worlds boasted statues of their important figures crafted by Kovac artisans. The Grail, however, preferred to take rather than pay for Kovac artwork and other treasures. They would raid colonies, kidnapping both people and plundering wealth. Despite numerous complaints to the Celestial Confederation, nothing was done beyond lukewarm condemnations of the Grail's actions. The Grail were too powerful for most Confederation members to challenge, and the Rari and Jesser simply didn't care. The newest race to join the Confederation was an enigma. The Terrans, or humans as they called themselves, were friendly to many races and had recently started setting up trade deals. They were not weak, as the Twilarch learned the hard way when they sent invasion fleets into Terran space. Initially, the invasion seemed successful against the Terrans' seemingly primitive space technology. However, within 25 solar cycles, 50 Terran years, the humans had driven the Twilarch off their planet and then out of their system. The Twilarch sent a larger force within 5 solar cycles, only to be met with a nasty surprise. The human fleet had advanced to match, if not surpass, Twilarch technology. Some elements of the human ships were clearly re-engineered from captured Twilarch designs. Despite being outnumbered nearly 2 to 1, the humans managed to cripple or destroy over 90% of the Twilarch fleet, forcing the remainder to flee. The humans lost a third of their fleet, but were in a far better position to recover their wrecked ships and rescue survivors. Remarkably, they even took a large number of Twilarch prisoners, treating them humanely and trading them back as part of a peace treaty. The treaty required the Twilarch to recognize Terran sovereignty and return any humans held captive. There was no loss of territory, no massive reparations, and no enslavement of their people. The Twilarch were taken aback by such generous terms. Some members of the Confederation wondered why the Twilarch would agree without any occupied possessions. The reason became clear when several high-ranking officers who had been captured and released by the Terrans reported back. They described their humane treatment despite the actions of Twilarch occupation troops left on Terra. They also saw the other side of human nature, a desire for revenge and rapidly advancing technology. It was evident that Terra would soon surpass the Twilarch in technological prowess and military strength, possibly even seizing their home planet. Accepting peace and engaging in significant trade with the Terrans seemed the best option. Surprisingly, many Twilarch refugees were accepted by the Terrans after their star went nova, destroying much of their territory. Now, Twilarch were considered members of Terran society, a remarkable development. Orin was only slightly surprised when a Terran fleet jumped into space within 500 TK of the planet. He watched in amazement as the smaller Terran fleet obliterated the much larger Grail ships. This allowed Orin to join the humans as they landed troops on the planet's surface. This is how he found himself standing in the ruins of a settlement that once housed 150,000 of his people. Only a handful had managed to hide well enough to escape the slaughter. The survivors described a Grail force numbering over 500,000 troops and slaver gangs, planning to break into smaller groups and attack everywhere. Orin stepped back and listened as the human commander, or commandant in their rank system, issued orders to her troops. He answered any questions she had, helped calm the terrified survivors, and convinced them that the humans were friends. He even managed to get a few to act as guides for human soldiers, showing them where to find water and identifying terrain features suitable for defensive positions. Others helped bury the dead, with the humans treating the deceased with great respect. Orin was very surprised to see some Twilarch among the troops as well. Due to their high aptitude for mathematics and other sciences, humans are considered some of the best engineers and technicians in the Terran military. One human even told me they can rise to the rank of officer and command other human soldiers, a very peculiar arrangement. I had never heard of another military that integrated different species on an equal footing. Those that included other species typically used them as slave labor or cannon fodder. As Commander Zara explained the plan to me, she detailed that we were to dig in and wait for reinforcements over the next 2 days. She mentioned that another 2 Marine legions and 4 Army legions would be arriving. Sensing my confusion, she elaborated that each legion consisted of 5,000 troops, divided into 10 cohorts of 500 each. Each legion was self-sufficient in all troop types except for armored vehicles. 9 cohorts were combat soldiers, while the 10th included combat soldiers, medical staff, engineers, communication technicians, artillery, and heavy weapons. The rest were part of her headquarters group. I listened intently, realizing that I needed to relay this information to Elder Aaron and the members of the Cook Grand Council so that they could protect themselves in the future. I was so absorbed in Zara's briefing that I didn't notice a young soldier approach until he was less than an arm's length away. I still struggled to understand their speech when they talked too fast, so I simply followed the commander when she asked me to join her. We ended up at the settlement's public gathering building. The settler guiding the humans was squatting with a look of pure misery and resignation. In contrast, the humans looked angry. Later, I would learn that angry was an understatement. They were furious. When I peeked inside, I was saddened but not surprised to see that all the settlement's children had been massacred. The Grail had even made sport of some of them. While my people had seen such horrors before and resignedly accepted them, the humans were different. Murdering children was one of their greatest taboos, especially in warfare. While accidents saddened them, deliberate acts were unforgivable and considered war crimes, warranting severe punishment. Zara's voice, filled with anger, ordered her subordinates to view the scene and prepare for action. Even the Twilarchs, despite their own people's similar actions in the past, were angry. She began readying her troops for combat. After 3 cohorts viewed the slaughter, she ordered them to suit up and head for the drop ships. Heavy weapons were also ordered, including crew-served railguns, mortars, and a rifle as tall as the soldier wielding it, meant for taking out big guns, vehicles, and buildings. Each soldier wore strong ceramic armor that covered their torso, with separate pieces for arms and legs. Their helmets covered most of their head and had face shields, communication devices, and enhanced visual capabilities. The armor was joined by advanced Kevlar, which provided excellent mobility and resistance to melee weapons and claws. Whether it could withstand Grail talons, fangs, and their spiked tails was yet to be seen. Soldiers had retractable blades in their dominant hand gauntlet and carried various melee weapons, including swords and others I didn't recognize. These weapons could cut through the strongest armor or natural defenses, though their construction was a military secret, self-destructing if handled by non-humans. The Twilarchs had their versions as well, including warhammers, axes, war picks, and spiked maces. The soldier's primary weapon was a rifle firing various types of ammo, with a retractable spike referred to as a can opener. I tried to explain that close combat with the Grail, given their size, strength, natural weapons, and strong armor, was deadly, but Zara was unimpressed. She mentioned a creature called a megascorpion, a genetically modified version of a smaller scorpion, which they dealt with by simply removing its tail early on. Very strange people indeed. I was surprised when Zara agreed to lead the group herself and allowed me to accompany them as long as I stayed out of the way. A group of 10 Grail was attacking a settlement 24 TK away. We arrived in less than 5 human minutes. Instead of immediately attacking, they positioned themselves in a small valley out of sight from the village. One cohort advanced to the settlement while the other 2 dug holes and trenches on either side of the valley, concealing themselves expertly. Even knowing their positions, I could hardly see them. Another trench was dug further back. Ambush in the Valley, a tactical masterpiece. The valley floor was largely exposed, but parts of it were cleverly concealed. Hidden within were rail guns, meticulously camouflaged, alongside mortars positioned much further back. The whereabouts of the human with the large gun remained unknown. When questioned, Commander Xalia called it an ambush, designed to surprise the enemy and inflict greater casualties than if they had been seen coming. Halen laughed and told Xalia that the Grail weren't known for quick thinking and were often too stubborn to alter their initial plans. Xalia's smile was predatory, like a hunter eyeing its prey. She explained that the cohort moving towards the settlement was tasked with attacking the Grail, luring them into a trap. This explained why one trench on the valley floor was not hidden like the others. It wasn't long before Halen heard the distinct sizzle of Grail pulse rifles and the louder pop-pop of human weapons. His keen eyesight allowed him to see the humans retreating before Xalia did, with the Grail in pursuit. Xalia simply said, "Good," before thanking him and asking him to keep her updated until the humans could see the enemy clearly. This saved valuable time, as humans' eyes adjusted to the differing light conditions. As Halen watched, the human troops executed a tactical retreat, periodically turning to fire. Their marksmanship was exceptional, felling many Grail, though the enemy kept advancing. Some humans carried or assisted the wounded. Halen learned the term wounded from their behavior. Sadly, he saw some humans fall and not rise again, struck by Grail weapons. Reporting this to Xalia, he noticed a touch of sadness in her voice as she gave new orders, a rare trait among officers of other species. A trickle of humans began entering the valley, passing the concealed positions. Most jumped into the trenches, ready to face the Grail, while a few carried wounded comrades further back for treatment. As the last humans entered, they were followed by several Grail, who were promptly shot by the humans in the trenches. Halen looked at Xalia, who whispered that they were waiting for more Grail to enter before launching their counterattack. As more Grail poured into the valley, they were systematically shot by the humans. Halen spotted the Grail war leader, easily distinguished by his size, leading his forces. He relayed this to Xalia, who whispered into her comm device, her demeanor growing more intense as the battle unfolded. Despite the odds of 1,500 humans against 10,000 Grail, Halen felt a rising sense of panic. The Grail war leader barked orders, sending a group of 500 Grail charging into the valley. The humans held their fire until the Grail were right upon them, then unleashed a devastating volley. Not a single Grail managed to fire back. Amidst the noise, Xalia instructed Halen to watch for the war leader approaching a specific pile of rocks. When Halen asked why, she simply winked, saying he'd find out. As Halen observed, almost all the initial Grail attackers were killed, with a few retreating. Xalia explained that the survivors would spread fear among their ranks, believing they faced only a small human force. The war leader then sent in a larger group, who charged the valley entrance with a fierce battle cry. Again, the humans waited until they were past their position before opening fire, decimating the front line. However, some Grail got closer this time, forcing the humans to engage in melee combat. Halen watched as the humans skillfully fought off the Grail, though a few were ripped apart by Grail talons or fangs. Despite this, the humans managed to kill or wound many Grail, with only a handful of Grail able to land blows before being cut down. The air grew thick with the smell of death, blood, and vomit. The battlefield was a gruesome scene, heavily favoring the humans. Around 1,700 Grail lay dead or injured, while the humans had fewer than 20 killed and 3 injured to fight. But the battle was far from over. Approximately 3,000 more Grail advanced into the valley, this time marching confidently, thinking the humans were out of ammo. Only a dozen humans opened fire, bolstering the Grail's confidence. They didn't even bother unslinging their rifles, intending to tear the humans apart with talons and fangs. As they drew closer, expecting an easy victory, the true trap was about to be sprung. The humans, seemingly defeated, readied their melee weapons for the final confrontation.